Hey guys, and welcome to another aquarium tour video. Over Easter I visited the Deep in Hull, which is considered the UK's best aquarium. This aquarium not only had a wide array of fish, but it also let you see the behind the scenes equipment that is essential for everyday maintenance of the aquarium. Check out the corals and the filefish here. An unusual sight is the mud skipper here. This fish can actually breathe out of the water and walk across the land. The first big tank when entering was the lagoon tank. This was really interesting as not only did it have an above the water mangrove piece, but underwater it had loads of coral. One thing about the deep is that it had a lot of alive corals and macroalgae that were really interesting to look at and gave the tanks an extra level of added natural beauty. There are a lot of oddball fish in this tank, such as unicorn fish, which you might see throughout the tank. This tank was really lively, with lots of different fish, including rays and sharks, but also, on the other side when you went down a set of stairs, you could put your head in through a porthole, and also, there was a deeper section of the tank which housed a lot more fish that may be not as confident in the shallow water. You may also see the reef triggerfish. This is the state fish of Hawaii and is also called the humu humu nuku nuku a'apu a'a, if the pronunciation is alright on that one. One of the more interesting interactions in this tank included the cleaner wrasse with the other fish. The cleaner wrasse will eat parasites and other debris off the fish's skin. This includes dead skin as well, but these will do this as a sort of service to these larger fish whilst getting some food. Despite its small size, the cleaner wrasse can also do this with sharks. It's quite brave, and as you can see, some of the fish aren't always up to this. There was also an incredibly large stars and stripes pufferfish. I know lots of people like pufferfish because they're very interactive and have their own little personalities. In my experience, all the pufferfish I've seen at aquariums have been extremely photogenic, and this one was no exception, with it coming straight up to the glass and almost saying hello. My personal favourite fish in this tank was this bamboo shark. I'm not 100% sure whether this is a bamboo shark, so please correct me if I'm wrong. This here is the deeper section of the tank. As you can see, there are a lot more of the smaller fish down here. This deeper reef section was very interesting to watch, with this very large marine angelfish looking straight at us most of the time. I think that these large marine angelfish are some of the best fish to be shown in these reef aquariums, as they are such a beautiful fish. Now, just before we get to one of the bigger attractions of the deep, we go through some smaller reef tanks. Despite most people thinking that these are not as exciting as the shark tanks, there are actually a lot of alive corals which you don't usually see. This made the aquariums feel a lot more naturalistic. They even had a very rare black and white clownfish. These tangs and damsels here were very vibrant and were a great addition to the tank. Next is one of the main attractions of the deep. These are Gentoo penguins, which you may recognise from the film Mr. Popper's Penguins. These penguins live on islands near Antarctica and eat krill, fish and squid. In the wild, they will actually congregate in colonies of up to 30 to thousands of different individuals. Whereas in the wild they are quite speedy and active, these ones were quite happy to just waddle about and occasionally go for a swim. The next set of videos are from the first perspective of the deep's biggest tank. The biggest tank in the deep is called the Endless Ocean and contains many different species. This tank contains 2.5 million litres of water, and more importantly contains the only pair of green sawfish in the UK. These two are the main reason why I came to the deep. This species is critically endangered in the wild and is absolutely beautiful. It fills me with awe just to see these creatures because they're so bizarre looking. Other residents of this tank include two rescued sea turtles. These two are called Sensor and Mabouche, and they're rescued from the wild after being caught on fishermen's lines. These two cannot be released, as you can see one of them has significant damage to its shell, and apparently they both have damage to their lower jaw. Despite not being able to see a clip of it in this video, there was actually a nurse shark in this tank, but it was so lazy and it was in a very dark spot, so the camera didn't pick it up very well. Another interesting thing about this tank is that it actually has a glass elevator inside of it that you can access and use. If you ever decide to come to the deep, I would suggest coming early, because then you skip the wait for this, and it is well worth the visit. Here you can see a diver who was cleaning the tank and also feeding some of the inhabitants, such as the moray eel. Here's another fan favourite, the clownfish. In the deep there's a lot of different anemones for these clownfish to go inside and be safe inside of. There's no other predators in the tank, so they don't have to worry about that, but they still like hanging out in the anemones. If you want to learn more about these fish, check out my video on 5 clownfish facts. Here's a beautiful white and black moray eel. In the next tank, there was a black spotted pufferfish. These guys actually change their patterns with age. Very briefly, you might be able to see some pipefish, which are relatives of the seahorse. These are in a tank with some garden eels, which like to pop in and out of the sand. In the next tank, you'll be able to see some Amazon natives. These include the pacu and the red-tailed catfish. These can both be sold at pet stores and can get massive, as you can see in this video. The next lot of tanks contain many fish that you may see around local pet shops. These include knife fish, which can start off very small but get very big, as you might see here. They have a weird undulating fin movement to keep moving. If you're very observant, you'll recognise that this is the same as the electric eel. This is because the electric eel is actually a type of knife fish and not an eel. This is the second perspective of the endless ocean tank. There is a central pillar in the main bit of the aquarium. As you can see, there's a fairly large shoal of fish which resemble giant trevallies circling this. I can't quite remember the species name, so if anyone could leave that down in the comments, that'd be great. Most of the footage comes from a small underwater tunnel which lets you see all the fish from inside. The thing about the endless ocean tank is it's very vertical rather than horizontal, which most tanks are. This was unusual, but you could tell the fish inside really enjoyed having the extra space where they could swim up and down. Some of the creatures not yet mentioned in this tank include zebra sharks, honeycomb whiptail rays, white-tip reef sharks and grey reef sharks. I really appreciated how close the tunnel let you get to these amazing creatures, and also how much space that these animals actually had, and the deep very much cares for the animal welfare, as you can tell. I also really like looking at the silhouettes of the sharks cast down by the lights above. Shown here is the underwater lift footage. This was probably my favourite bit about the aquarium. Inside this glass lift in the endless ocean habitat, you got to transcend 3 different floors. This gave a whole new perspective to the tank, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Now, onto an area of my expertise. These are the native saltwater fish. They had a wide array of different invertebrates, but more importantly, they had lumpfish. I absolutely love lumpfish. I think they're so cute, and as you can see in one of these videos, one of them goes upside down and shows you its sucker organ, which it uses to attach to rocks. Some of the more unusual inhabitants included some moon jellyfish. These moon jellyfish were spun continually in a circular tank, so then they weren't damaged. This starfish was absolutely crazy looking. It had so many little tentacle-like feet that you could just see just grasping the glass all the time. Over the time that we were in this exhibit, it actually moved about 30 centimeters. Unfortunately, its tank mate wasn't as pretty. This has to be the most ugly looking wolf eel I've ever seen, and that's saying something because they're not very pretty usually. Next was the large tank, which contained mainly pollock and a few haddock. As well as this, there was a very colourful rat on the floor, but you may not be able to see that. This tank has a very small spider crab in it, as well as some urchins. The spider crab was quite clumsy over the rocks. This next tank was in the gift shop, and you could see it whilst waiting for a ticket. And finally, in the exit, there was a snake neck turtle in its own little tank. I hope you enjoyed this video, and look at this t-shirt that I bought for the 20th anniversary of the Deep.